Okay, take two. Sorry. Um, Hi everyone. Thank you and welcome to the Transfer Students Talk at Camp 2020's online conference entitled Now Boarding College. So special thanks to our sponsors, the Princeton Review, LIMS Review Center, Student Services Manila, Study International, and Manila Bulletin. So for this talk, we will have our panelists here today, Sachiko, Risa, and Andrea, to talk more about transferring to universities abroad. So to introduce them, so first of all, Sachiko is a transfer student in Cornell University, studying hotel administration with a concentration in finance, accounting, and real estate. Before she transferred, she spent 2 years of undergrad in Ateneo de Manila University in management engineering. However, the online school setting has led her to pursue her interests in real estate and food and move across the world in the middle of the pandemic. So thank you, Sachiko, and say hi. Yay.
Hi, everybody.
Okay, next is Risa. So Risa is an aspiring products slash UX designer for a decade long, but still an amateur multi-instrumentalist and an incoming transfer junior at Barnard College, Columbia University, and NYC. She spent her previous 2 years at the University of British Columbia in Vancouver, honing her interest in the cognitive sciences, particularly in the interaction between neuroscience, design, and technology slash AI. So hi, Risa. Oops. Okay. And not last but not the least, we have Rhea, who's oh, oops. We have Rhea, who is an incoming junior at Dartmouth College studying computer science and government after transferring from Tufts University from her freshman year. At Dartmouth, she works as an undergraduate researcher, um, tour guide, and makerspace student instructor. She also acts as a board member for the International Student Association and Women in CS organization. She is currently interning for a Philippine-based startup called Snap through Kaya Founders and is interested in the applications of computer science in biotechnology and social impact. So hi, Rhea. Okay, great. So thank you so much again for speakers for taking the time and effort to help Filipinos fulfill their study abroad dreams. So for the panelists, reminder the running order of which you guys will speak for the questions. So first is Sachiko, then Risa, and then Rhea. Okay. So and house rules. Before we begin, please take note of some house rules. Please put your Q&A, your questions in the Q&A box, and please stay muted during the entire call. We will answer the Q&A sessions, questions at the end of the call. So um, now I will be asking the questions, the pre-made questions for our panelists. So first of all, um, so overview, we'll discuss your transfer student story and the process you went through in order to be able to transfer, and you will be sharing with them why you decided to transfer and what factors led you to choose the school that you did. So first of all, what school did you go to before and what school do you go to now?
Yes. Well, thank you, everybody, also for coming in. And we're so excited to also share all our experiences. As was mentioned a while ago, I was from Ateneo. So from a local university, I decided to transfer into a bigger university in Ithaca, which is called Cornell University. And I've been loving my experiences so far.
Hi, as Q mentioned earlier, I spent 2 years at the University of British Columbia in Vancouver in Canada, and I'm an incoming transferred junior at Barnard College, which is the women's undergrad college at Columbia in New York.
Right. Yeah. And I transferred to Dartmouth, which is where I am right now, from Tufts, which is from Tufts University, which is down in Boston.
Okay, thank you for that. So this is the next question. And why did you decide to transfer?
Okay, for me, it really was not in my plan to transfer at all. I loved Ateneo, I loved my major, and only really because of the pandemic I decided to transfer. It was like Christmas break and I had really nothing else to do. So I was like, okay, you know what? Why not try transferring? Because I saw that like there was like research or like some scientists who said that in the Philippines we'd be online until 2023. And I was gonna go crazy if I would be online until 2023. So I said, okay, mom, I can't do this anymore. I'm gonna try leaving the Philippines and go to a school that was on site. And yeah, lucky for me that I was able to go. Yeah. Just the pandemic basically.
For me, I had like three main reasons why I decided to transfer. Firstly, when I entered UBC, I kind of wanted to study psychology, but I realized it wasn't really for me. And then sometime in the summer, I took a biopsychology course and I was like, I super loved it. And I was just trying to look for similar courses at UBC, but then they didn't have any similar courses. Like they didn't have a neuroscience program and they didn't have a biopsychology program. I then I did some more research and I found that at UBC was starting a neuroscience program, but this coming September. And as a junior, actually, I already had senior year standing because of the number of credits I did, but I wouldn't be able to kind of do those courses anymore because science courses at UBC require so many prerequisites, and I was in the Faculty of Arts. So it was just super unfeasible for me. And for my major, which is cognitive science, it really involves a lot of different subjects. And I felt like the neuroscience aspect of the field was a very important reason, a very important like part of the program, but they didn't really have that. Secondly, I kind of wanted a more artistically nurturing environment. It was a bit hard for me to get music classes at UBC. I signed up for like this music theory class because I wanted to do a minor in music. It took me like 4 semesters and I never got off the wait list. And I just felt like wasn't a lot of like Broadway around or like symphony orchestras that I could like go to. And the third reason was just basically I had a hard time making friends in such a huge university. There were like 55K undergrad students at UBC. And I experienced something over the Christmas break and I kind of realized like I wanted a smaller community. And I really missed having like a sense of like a group of friends or like a tight-knit community that I kind of grew up having but lost because of the pandemic. So yeah.
For me naman, I actually think like in the beginning or like part of it was also definitely the pandemic. Since like freshman year was when like COVID kind of hit like end of senior year for me. And so my freshman year at Tufts, I actually took remotely, completely remotely from home. And like with the 12-hour time difference, it was just like kind of crazy to handle like classes and like trying to like meet people. And I felt just kind of like generally very isolated from everyone. And I think that was like one of the definitely like the main driving factor that made it hard for me to kind of like assimilate into like the community at Tufts. So that was like the first thing. And because of that, I started like researching a bit more, and ultimately like I like found like Dartmouth is like one of like my top choices, because in terms of like the academic programs that I found, I really liked one of the majors that we have here, called Quantitative Social Science. And there's not a lot of like equivalents at other schools. And it's essentially like a combination of data science with the social sciences. And there's like a lot of professors in like the gov, econ, like psych, sociology departments in that department. And it's very like interdisciplinary, which I really liked. And I'm thinking of minoring in it as well. So that was like one part. And also as like someone who's like kind of interested in like international development or just like international relations in general, like there were some programs here at Dartmouth that I didn't find at Tufts, and so that was like, I guess, another thing as well. And I think that in terms of like the culture and like the history, I kind of preferred like some of the cultural aspects of Dartmouth as well, because we are like a pretty small school, and there's just like a lot of like the alumni community is like really tight knit, so I like that as well.
Okay, thank you for that. So my next question is kind of similar actually to the previous question, but what factors influence your decision to transfer specifically to your university? Were there like, let's say, financial aid, more financial aid, or like closer to home, closer to your family and things like that? So yeah, go back to Sachiko, Risa, and Rhea.
Well, can I just say that the two other panelists, all of their answers are so like complex, and then my answer was like, oh, it's just because of the pandemic. I just don't want to do online school anymore. Bye, I'm so petty. But then to answer this question, what factors that came into my head, what made me choose Cornell? First of all, I was researching and saw that Cornell had a very good transfer community. Like they accept so many different transfers from everywhere. So you know that you're not the only transfers. Because I know a lot of other schools, it's like 12 people in the whole school year, they'll only choose those transfers. But then there are like hundreds of us now, like in Cornell, for example, who enter that year. So you never feel alone, and you're never at the time like when you feel so lost and you can't ask other people for help because we're just like such a big community. Second thing also was major. I'm a cloud chaser, so I was like, oh my god, I'm only gonna apply to Ivy League schools. And then I was like, which major really fits me the most? And out of all the other like Ivy League schools, they didn't have like a business major, because I came from management engineering, which is very business oriented, and I wanted to look for a more business oriented major also in the Ivy Leagues. And then Cornell had one that was really specific to my interests, which is real estate, finance, and food. So that those were the two major factors that really went into it. Location, I had no idea where Ithaca was. It's in the middle of nowhere, so that did not come into my head. I didn't know where I was going pala. Yeah, I think those are like the two biggest ones.
For me, I didn't really apply to a lot of schools. But I looked at which schools offered the program I wanted, which was cognitive science. I also looked at like class sizes and like the campus, not campus, sorry, the size of the student body. And I also looked for schools in a city. Yeah, those are the main three, I guess. The others were a bit more like specific. And I wanted like a very personalized experience, but I wanted I wanted the school that gave me a very personalized experience, but also had the same amount of opportunities as like a research university. So those are mine. Yeah, in general.
I think the very first thing that I looked at was like schools that offered financial aid, because at Tufts I was on financial aid, and so I also wanted a financial aid package that matched or was better than what I was already getting. And so honestly, that really narrowed down the choices. I think that really, at least in the US, since I only applied to schools in the US, but in the US, there are not a lot of universities that offer like financial aid to international transfer students. And I think like I also like tried making a list, and it's probably like 20, less than 20, or at least like in the schools that I was able to like look at, or I guess the schools that I researched. Um, and so that narrowed it down considerably. But also, I guess I was also kind of looking at, again, like academic programs that I was interested in. So I like for each school, I would look at like the courses, the majors, the different like extracurricular programs that they had. And so that's kind of how I like came to Dartmouth. And yeah, I think actually that those are the main two things. Yes.
Okay, thank you all for that. So the next question would be, what is the main difference between your college and your old college and your new college?
Oh my gosh, this could go on and on. I think I see also some Q&A questions put out here, like what's the difference between like a local school and a school in the States. Okay, trying to break it down first. Let's say with academic, in terms of academic, at least for me, the things that they teach in the classroom is the stuff that they will actually test you on. For me, when I was in Ateneo, like they taught so many different things, but then there are things that you don't even like, even if you study so hard, that your tests aren't related to what they teach. So to me, it's like, why do they even give all of these different tests in the first place if like what you're teaching is completely different and misaligned? That, and also the fact that sometimes when it comes to like Ateneo, they put a lot of different classes that you're not be interested in, but you're forced to take. And that those have like some pros and cons for different people. For me specifically, like I didn't really want to take a lot of like the philosophy and theology classes that Ateneo is really known for, but I was forced to take it, even if I was a magic engineering major, which is like completely different from what I was studying. So sometimes I was like, oh, this is kind of useless. But then when I was in Cornell, it's like you're on your own. Here are like the different set of classes that you need to take. Example, one science, one math, one computer science class, for example. And then you can just take from a list of different classes from there. And then also in Cornell, they're so nice that you can just ask anyone and everyone when it comes to school. They have teaching, what they call teaching assistants. So outside of class, if ever you need help and you don't understand anything that's going on, you can just approach your teaching assistant and be like, hey, what's going on here? I didn't understand anything that the professor said kanina. Can you help me? Then to help you. But then your best friends in trying to learn and know the material when you're here in Ateneo or like in a local school are usually your barkada, your blockmates, and the people around you, instead of someone who like knows the material a little bit more. So that's academic. Okay, I'll try to cut this short. And then also, when it comes to example for the social, I feel like when it comes to Ateneo, they're really good at making it very structured socials. They put all of you in blocks. And I'm sure also all the other universities here, like UP LaSalle, they put you in blocks in your first 2 years, for example. And then you have the same classes all the time. And then you're like forced to be with each other. But then as a transfer student in Cornell, you're kind of like, oh, you're on your own here, go make your own friends. There's not a lot of structure. So that's something that I specifically struggled with. And something specific to Cornell is that they're very big in Greek life. And that's something that Ateneo at least did not have. So I was kind of shocked. I can talk more about that later also. So that's a little bit on the social. Also, I have to say though, when it comes to like the people in like international US schools, I think they're a lot more open-minded with different things, from careers to interests to academics. But I feel like some people in the Philippines, when you're stuck to the same place for a really long time, I feel like sometimes people just have the same interests as everyone else because they don't know what else to be interested about, if that makes sense. They're just copying each other. So there's a lot more originality, I would say, in and individualism in the US. I tried. Okay. Yes, go.
For me, two of the main differences. Number one is the tuition. I think schools in the US don't really offer a lot of merit awards. Yeah, merit awards. they're more like financial aid. They give you need-based awards. But in Canada, I know that like I got into UBC with a merit scholarship, and I was able to fund like a bit of my second year with a lot of merit awards as well. But that's not really a common thing in the US because they focus more on like financial need, which you have to provide a lot of documents for. And but yeah, so tuition was a main thing. Um, and the costs are just going higher because of the inflation. Like in Canada, also like the insurance in Canada was like around like for international students around like $300, but in like my new school, it's like around 4,000 or something, and you can't really opt out of it, which sucks. And there's things also like little things come into play, like meal plans. Like we're kind of required to get a meal plan, but in larger universities, they don't really care. They don't really mind if you don't get a meal plan. They just let you do your own thing. So all of those kind of like add up to your tuition. And then the second main difference, which also has a lot of branches, is like the size of the university. So at Barnard, it's really close knit because there's only 2,000 students overall, and there's no graduate school. But it's also part of a research uni. But Columbia has like 6,000 undergrad students, which isn't as big as UBC, which had like 55,000 undergrads and like 20K grad students. So that was super huge. And the campus size was like at UBC was like around 900 something acres. And at Columbia, it's only 40 acres. But I think it's also because it's more integrated with the city. Oh yeah, that's another thing. Like, I think at UBC, the campus was more like, it was like its own city. It was really big and you could do so much stuff in there. But at Columbia, it's like really small because once you step out, there's a lot of things to do also because it's kind of integrated with New York. But the size of the university, like how many students there are, it also like affects the level of support that the admin and profs and like advisors give you. Because at Barnard, like when I send an email, they reply in like 5 minutes. I don't even know, like I've never experienced it before. Like they're like just like literally on the thread. It's like new message. It's like they're like so fast. I don't know if they have a life outside answering emails. It's just amazing. But because I have a lot of questions and they really handhold you through the process. Like as an international student, they literally have like they guide you through like a lot of things. They request to meet with you instead of like you kind of like trying to find your way looking for links and trying to meet people. They kind of reach out to you because there's only so many of us, so it's easy for them to reach out to us. And they also have like so as a transfer student, I have to do like a 2-week orientation program, which I think will really help with like kind of onboarding me and like helping me meet people there. But 1 week of that program is also like for international students specifically. So I think that's really cool. And a few more things, like at UBC, the course offerings, there were like so many different courses. Like it was an endless list basically, but I'd say the courses there were a lot more general. Like you would find every subject, like every general subject there, like geography, computer science, anthropology, acting, like all of those you'd find it at UBC. But since Barnard is a lot smaller and it's a liberal arts college, it's the course selections are a lot fewer, but at the same time they have their own twist on them. So like we have like a major in like medical anthropology, which is like really niche. So yeah, those are the main differences for me.
Between Tufts and Dartmouth, I actually think that like if you look at them in terms of academics, I'd say that they might be like pretty similar. Like in terms of size, both of them are around 4,000 to 5,000 undergrads. In terms of like academic offerings, aside from like the specific programs that I was interested in, like you could say that both of them are also kind of similar in that they offer maybe comparable like majors and like the like departments and academic and like major like plans or paths are kind of similar. Like both of them have like an engineering school. But I guess, well, on the note of like the engineering school at Tufts, I was considering going into a data science major, which would require me to transfer into the engineering school. And so like here at Dartmouth, there isn't really any distinction, like there isn't a very hard distinction between Thayer, which is our engineering school, and the general like liberal arts school. So it would, like here at Dartmouth, it would be very like easy for me to kind of like switch majors if I wanted to, which I liked, because I'm very undecided. But aside from that, I think like aside from everything that I've already mentioned, main differences would be the location. Tufts is very, very near Boston, and I think that in the coming years, they're actually like going to put a stop like right on campus, which can like bring you into Boston. So it's very easy to be in the area. And there's also a lot of other like universities in Boston, obviously. So you're kind of like not limited to just like Tufts students. You can kind of like explore the city, explore other campuses. But here at Dartmouth, we are like Dartmouth, if y'all don't know, is in Hanover, New Hampshire, which is also in the middle of which is also in the middle of nowhere. And like the nearest cities, I think are, I might be wrong with this. I think it's like Boston and like Montreal, Quebec. I'm sorry, I don't know Canada geography, but and it's around like 3 hours, like 2 to 3 hours to get to the nearest city. So most students do stay on campus. And there is like a bus that brings you like straight to Boston or straight to New York. But for the most part, like I like to stay on campus during the academic school year, or at least when I'm taking classes. And I think that definitely scared me at first, because obviously like I grew up like in Manila. I'm probably going to like work in a city once I graduate, but I think like that's part of like I've kind of like learned throughout my time being here that there is like a certain appeal to it, in that like we are surrounded by so much nature, and like the outdoors program here is like really, really robust, and I think like I have been able to like do so much with it, and a lot of the traditions are also centered around it. And so that has been like really, really fun, because I don't think I would have been able to get like these experiences at a more like urban like university. And so like right now it's like the summer term and I'm on campus doing research, but like I have friends who are taking classes, and like after like taking classes they can like go down to the Connecticut River and go like kayaking, and it's just like so nice to like have like those like kinds of like experiences, and it feels like a nice little bubble outside the world. And yeah, I think it's kind of nice having that community that is very like Dartmouth. And I think that like contributes to to why a lot of like alumni and just like the community in general is like really sorry, united, or like yeah. And I guess the other big thing would be social life. So Greek life is also a really big thing here, like Cornell. So yeah, I could like give the stats on that, but a lot of people do join Greek life. I will say that I think as someone who is like who knows a lot about like Greek life in the Philippines, because my parents were involved in it, I don't think it's the same as like Greek life in the Philippines and like Greek life in the US. I am personally like in a sorority, and I think like I have like enjoyed it so far, and it has been a good experience for me. I don't think I would have joined a sorority at any other college in the US actually. And so like while it is a really big thing, I think that I think it has like adapted to kind of match the diversity of Dartmouth's campus, which is like pretty diverse. And I think yeah, those are the main reasons. Yes. Ooh.
Okay, yes. Thank you, everyone. Also a reminder to put your questions in the Q&A box if you have any. So for the next question, the second to the last question actually, how did you start with the transfer application process?
So I did my transfer application process literally at the peak of the pandemic. So I think a lot of the colleges changed their requirements. So please take everything that I say with a grain of salt because they might have changed again. But actually, it is very similar to if ever you've done like freshman application process, applying to the States, it's very similar. Do your essays. That was, I think, the biggest thing that took up most of my time. I actually only started my transfer applications January 2021 and they were due March 2021. So I had like 2-3 months to do all of my applications, and most of the time was really just on essays. I had friends, actually friend singular, who just read my essays and then proofread it. And mostly it was, I think that was the hardest part. But everything else, example, like teacher recommendations, I can give you tips on that. Also, you can message me if ever. But teacher recommendations were really easy to get by because you can just message your teacher and then be like, follow up, please. I need you to help me get into my dream school, professor. That, and you can also check out if ever a school still needs SAT or not because of the pandemic. They do change their requirements. I don't even think I answered the question. How did I start the application? I was like, okay, Sachiko, start na natin. Okay. I don't know what else. It was, if you could clarify also the question, if that's correct, I think just like running through.
But maybe like, yeah, when did you start and like what step was like your first step into starting your application, if that makes sense?
Okay. Yes. Okay. So yeah, January 2021. From there, I started looking also into what schools, um, what schools are the schools that I actually wanted to transfer into. When I was trying to narrow down schools, because there's so many good schools in the States, I put into my head like, oh, what is a school I'm willing to leave my family behind? Willing to leave my Ateneo life, my ME life, which I really enjoyed in the middle of a pandemic. And like, I really would regret if I did not try applying for that college. So from there, very emotion based, I would say. And I tried to see which schools also were aligned to my major and which would accept transfers. Also, when you do transfer, I think you also have to remember that even if your passion and your determination to want to transfer is there, you also have to be very strategic and you want to see the stats of all the different schools, try to look at the acceptance rates. So example for me, when I saw in Cornell has a very good transfer acceptance rate, I was like, okay, yeah, this is a school that realistically I might have a chance. But if ever example, it's like Princeton, when it comes to like transfer students, they only really get like people who have gone through military or like people like super unique transfer applications. So of course, like you have to be very strategic in which colleges to choose in. And then once I had that down, I made like a spreadsheet of all the requirements, of all the deadlines, of all which teachers I need to reach out to, because I can't make the teacher write like 10 different recommendation letters for all the 10 schools I'll apply to, for example. So I have to choose strategically also who would give me the strongest recommendation letter. And then when it came to like essays, honestly, that was stressful. But I got a lot of I think that's the next question. I think the resources where you can get most of your help from, I could talk about that later. But yes, I'll also leave my other panelists on what to say. I'm so sabog, sorry.
For me, I started in January also because most of the deadlines are in March or April at the most. The main three things I did work on in January were essays. Well, not, I think end of Jan, I worked on essays. One of them was there's this form that you have to pass around to your current profs and they have to like sign it. And input your current grades. So I had to do that, and that took quite a while. I don't know. And then so I did that. I did my essays, and I also reached out to two of my profs that I felt like I really was close to / I did well in their class. So, and then you have to kind of give them time to write your recommendation letter. And I also didn't want them to write I mean, I felt like they knew me well enough, but I didn't want to like just leave them. So I spent a week kind of like writing this might be a bit weird, but I spent a week like writing essays about myself, like my interests, why I want to transfer, my circumstances, stuff like that. And I put them in a Google Drive, and I just shared both of them. So I was like, if you want to like learn more about me, here's a folder. And they were like, yeah, that's like super helpful. So that took a week. And then I think that was the most part of how I got started. And then in February, I had to order my transcript because it takes around 3 weeks max for the transcript to be sent to the Common App, I think. Yeah. So those are the things I did to get started.
Yeah, I guess honestly, you guys kind of covered most of it already. It is like very similar to freshman year applications, which I did like the year before. So I like was very like attuned with like what the process looked like. And if you guys aren't, then you can go look at the other talks for this camp speaker series. But yeah, I think similarly, like I like once I knew that I was gonna like try transferring, I researched schools, and so for me that looked like narrowing down which schools gave financial aid or like merit scholarships, and then from then looking at like their majors, like departments, look and then trying to imagine what it would look like if I transferred there, and so like that is like just like looking at would I want to kind of like drop everything and like go there based on like the opportunities that they have there. And then yeah, after that it was really just like application requirements, right? Like transcript, recommendations and essays, which like the previous panelists have very well covered. So yeah.
Okay, for the last question of the preset questions that we have, where did you learn about transferring, and yeah, what resources were the most helpful for you throughout this process?
I really like the first question. How did I learn about transferring? So I said a while ago that I did it during Christmas break. And I was like, oh my God, finally I have time to rest. I'm gonna read. And then so I was reading Barack Obama's book, A Promised Land. And in the first few pages, he goes, oh yeah, when I was an incoming junior, I transferred from Occidental College to Columbia. And I was like, oh my God, you know what? If Barack Obama can do it, then I can do it. Anyway. And then so where did I get the resources to transfer? I actually got a lot of help. Basically like 80% of my help came from one of my friends who got into Harvard. He's a Filipino, so if ever you do have like a friend who has gone through the whole process, it's really nice to have that fresh set of eyes who could comment on your work, on your whole common application, your essays, etc. But actually, like if ever my friend got tired, most of the things that I would get my inspiration from, my help from, was actually YouTube. There's so many different YouTubers who read out their essays online, who give out their stats, who like they just tell you like their whole application process, something like this, like the panelists. But then some people go really deep and like give actually really good tips and advice. So devour YouTube for that. And also another resource that I went through is Reddit. Reddit has so many good threads of people like they say like, oh, what are my chances of getting in if these are my stats when it's like currently in my school. And then yeah, people have very good insights there also. because people abroad know how the process is like. Unfortunately, the resources from the Philippines are a little more limited because most of the people here go through the local school application. So having help is a little bit more scarce, but then it's a good thing that you're here in camp because now you get to know other people like Rhea and Risa. If you ever need more help or me, you can reach out.
Yeah, basically what she said. And yeah, so YouTube was one for me, and Reddit. Actually, for my first year applications, I got a lot of help from my friends who also I would ask help from people who were going through the process or who have gone through the process already. But for transfer apps, I actually didn't really tell people about it. Like I didn't tell anyone I was applying to transfer except my mom, but I didn't tell her like where I was applying. So it's basically I just did it by myself. But luckily, I do have this one friend who is a transfer student. He wanted to transfer out of the school he transferred to, and he's a very popular mod on applying to college. And he has a transfer server full of like people. It's a huge Discord server with people who are trying to transfer universities. So that's where I got most of my help from. He kind of reached out to me and he was like, "Hey, you want to join?" And I was like, "Yeah, cool." And that's where I got most of my support for transferring. Yeah.
Yeah, I think honestly, in terms of like how I knew that I wanted to transfer, I don't really remember. I guess like after like going through a couple of weeks in freshman year and like feeling the way I did, it just kind of like naturally was like, oh, like should I transfer? And then I just like kind of like went for it. And I guess some other like people who I was like talking to, um, they also like expressed interest in transferring, and so that was like one reason. And so as to like the resources, yeah, I would agree. Like people, like I asked like my sisters who are also like who didn't transfer but did like go through like freshman applications to review like my essays, my friends as well, and also like subreddits. I guess like the specific ones that I looked at for resources, like the transfer students one is like pretty good. That one is like pretty general. But also there's one that's like transferred to T25. And then that is the one that I might have spent most of my time on just because like and T25 means like the top like 25 like universities in the US. And I looked at that one because most of the schools that I was applying to, actually like all of the schools I was applying to, like could like classify as a T25, and that's because they are the ones that give financial aid. So I was on both of those subreddits a lot. Yeah, and also just like just resources for freshman year. For freshman year apps, I think a lot of them do carry over. So obviously things like camp should help with that. And also, I guess, yeah, okay, yes, I will say that for now.
Okay, thank you guys for your answers to the questions. Now we'll be moving on to the question and answer portion from the chat box. And so you feel free to ask questions through the chat. Also if uh the speakers want to like, send in their emails through the chat, that would be perfect because I know there's like a lot of questions and we might not have time to answer all. You could also, to the speakers, you could also like type the answers like for some questions that are like directed to you, since I think we won't have time for all of that. Okay, so the first question would be, was it costly to transfer? So any speaker could answer this. Yeah.
I can answer that. So it's not I don't think it's any different from first year applications because it depends on what college you're applying to. It depends if they have an application fee. The amount of the application fee doesn't really change regardless if you're a first year or a transfer student. So that's for US schools. I'm not so sure about in Canadian schools. I'm not so sure about schools in Asia, Europe, or elsewhere.
Yes, very costly. I think there are a lot of other questions here about financial aid. Oh wait, I'll pass this on to Andrea because I think that was like one of her biggest factors when it came to choosing a school. Sorry. You, Andrea, go.
Oh, no, you could answer it if you want to. But yeah, I guess is it costly to transfer? The application process is not that costly, I guess partly because like most schools don't require the SAT anymore. So like if you don't have it, like you don't have to take it if you don't want to. Or if you don't have like the funds or access to a testing center. For me as well, like I didn't really have to pay to request a transcript. And so in terms of like application like fees, I think like at least for me, there are like a couple of ways to like in my experience, there like most schools that I applied to, I could request for like an application like fee waiver. And so for most schools I did that. And that's also something that's true for freshman year applications. So if you do that, hopefully like the cost of applying is like not that much. And in that case, the only cost that you really have to think of would be like tuition, which is a rough one. I guess like there are like a couple of questions about like financial aid. Yes, I am on financial aid. And let's see, what are the scholarship opportunities? And yeah, okay. I actually, yeah, if you're, I can send like a link of like a document that where I kind of like listed like schools that I found that offer financial aid and maybe some merit scholarships to transfer students who are internationals. I can like send that through the chat. But I will say that it is kind of limited in that my scope of the schools that I was researching were already limited because I was like, oh, like I'm at Tufts, like what are the schools that I want to consider applying to? So yeah, I guess just something to keep in mind, but I can like post that in the Q&A as an answer to one of the questions.
Okay, so for the next question, when you guys transferred, did you go back to year one or did you continue to pursue the year you were in? Like, were your um call it like the what you've done already, have they been credited for your new school? So yeah.
I can start. So as if you want to transfer to a school in the UK, you have to start from year one, regardless of what school, regardless of how many credits you've done. If you want to transfer to like London or wherever, you have to start from year one. For other schools, it depends on how many, like, let's say you came from, like for me, I came from UBC. I completed like 62 credits. When you transfer universities, it depends on if those credits also transfer. If not all of those credits transfer, let's say only like 40 credits transfer and I need 52 credits to be a junior, then I will be bumped down a year, if that makes sense. Like, yeah. You guys could also add if you have any other insights, but that's how I think it works. And if it wasn't clear, I can just type it.
Yeah, I think in terms of like credits, I got at least I think it really varies from school to school is what I'll say, at least in the US. Like here at Dartmouth, like I sent in my transcript, all of the syllabi, and then each department went through the syllabus of like the courses that kind of corresponded to each course that I took, and then they kind of decided if there was an equivalent at Dartmouth. And so it was kind of, so for me, I didn't really have many issues because most of the classes that I received that did not get credit, they were like electives or like distributives that I don't need towards my major. So I was like, okay, whatever, that's fine. And so most of my like computer science classes, like engineering classes, those transferred. And so like thank God for the CS department here for that. But I know like I have friends in the government department here, and they had trouble like getting those credited. They had to like petition for some of the courses that were a bit more, that didn't have a clear equivalent. So I think that is like the main thing. They want to see that there's like like equivalence in terms of like how hard the class is, like what is the material you're covering, what is the kind of like, I guess, if terms of, and what are the types of evaluation, like do you like how many essays, like what tests, etc. So they have to see if those match up, at least in my experience. Also, because we are like a liberal arts school, I know like Sachiko, you mentioned that you're like coming from like ME in Ateneo, so that's like business based. And so I also like know a couple of transfers here who come from like a similar background, and they actually weren't able to get a lot of their credits transferred because we don't have like a business major here. And so that are the main factors, at least.
Yeah, business kids have it tough. I'm one semester late in comparison to my friends, which isn't so bad, but then I'll take it, you know. Everything else, I already hit the max for credit transfer. But I still am late, if that makes sense. Because there are a lot of classes in freaking local schools that are like so like what on earth are these? So example, if you're in Ateneo, there's science technology society, like there's no equivalent to that in the States, or all of these mga intact etc. na mga klase ng arte-arte nila, those don't get transferred. So even all my calculus classes, they just become like free electives also. But yeah, the two answered very well.
Okay, the next question would be, how were you guys able to juggle your academics while doing your transfer applications?
Honestly, if you start early and you kind of like have a plan at the start, you wouldn't really have to, like, it depends what courses you're taking in university as well. But like I said, if you plan things correctly, if you don't cram everything, it's not as hard to juggle as you might think. Like, yeah. For me, I think I just set aside a time every day, like an hour every 2 days, to work on my essays, because that's what's the most time consuming in the entire application process. The rest are just documents and things you have to get signed, but the really time consuming part is your essays. So if you start that and you dedicate enough time to working on those, and like a fixed schedule, I don't think you'll have a hard time.
Super true.
Yes.
Like literally, I think like Risa said like January, and then me also, I was January. But I think apps open like October-ish, like basta late this year. The fact that you're already here and you're thinking about it already shows that you are good timing. Yes, you can do it.
Yeah, I'd say if you start in November, December, you're like super early.
If Barack Obama can do it, you can do it also.
Okay, so next question would be, did you guys already consider applying to the universities that you are currently in during freshman college applications, or did these universities only became of interest later? I think, yeah, the universities you applied to transfer.
Okay. For very personal reasons that I kind of don't want to really get into in this panel, I did already think about applying to transfer before my first year started. So that was for me, but I wasn't sure which schools.
For me, no, really, it was not in my plan to transfer at all, zero. And then the Lord said, Sachiko, you're not my bravest soldier and you can't do online school for another semester. So please go transfer. Period.
Okay, I don't know if I'm like misunderstanding the question. Like I am like currently understanding the question as like the schools that you okay, like the schools that you guys are in, did you apply during your freshman year as well? Like that's like my understanding of the question. I don't know if that is the case, but in terms of like did I think of transferring before my first year started, I honestly will say yes. And I think like the main reason for that is because I was on so many wait lists, and I just like I think that feeling of like being like having to wait for like these other schools kept me from being able to go into the mindset of like, okay, I'm going to Tufts, I'm gonna like love Tufts. And like I think honestly, like after like I think towards the end of my spring semester at Tufts, I became like a lot happier, and I was able to like find people who like I like meshed well with, and I think that I would have been like completely fine if I stayed. But like definitely like before that, I think just like with because I was like in a space that was so saturated with like college application like to the US like content, and like being on these wait lists that made me feel like really like unsatisfied because I was like waiting and waiting. I think yeah, it made it kind of hard to like force myself into the mindset of like this is the school I'm gonna go to and I'm gonna like enjoy it. Um whew, which is like kind of like hard to say, but yeah. Um, and as to like, was I like interested in Dartmouth like in my freshman year applications? The fun answer is actually no, and the reason is because I actually applied mostly to schools that were in cities, and so Dartmouth is definitely not in a city, and so I didn't apply. But I and honestly, like I remember freshman year, I was like, oh, like yeah, I'm not gonna apply, and then I didn't even like research it. But like during my like transfer application research, I like looked in more into Dartmouth, and I was like, okay, like why did I do that? And I thought that was just like, yeah, I just thought it was like really weird. But yeah, I definitely like discredited it at first, but I'm really glad that I actually took the time to research it because I think like it is a pretty good fit for me. So
Okay, maybe the last question for this panel before we end. Yeah. What are the advantages and disadvantages of being a transfer student?
I can start. So I think some advantages are you get to start fresh, which was personally a big advantage for me. You get to start fresh, and you just get to meet a lot more people and have a completely new experience. Because technically, you're never gonna be a university student again. So so for me, having experienced university life in Canada and about to experience university life in the US, I think I'm very grateful to have like those experiences, and I feel like it will kind of like quote unquote broaden my horizons. I think another but a disadvantage would be like you'd have to start over again. So if you have friends already, if you kind of like started a new your own life in your previous university, then you kind of have to say goodbye to that, kind of. You also have to get used to all of the new logistics of your new university, like registration. Class registration might be like a whole new complicated process as compared to your old university, or they might not have certain things that you're used to with your old university. Just things like that. It's just external and internal changes, I guess.
yes, okay, I think yes, like completely agree that I think um like the challenge would be like actually transitioning to a new environment. I think that was like really tough. And also like benefits, honestly, benefits would be the reasons why you want to transfer, which depend on you and like what you want. And so for me, it was just like, again, like, yeah, it was like academics and like having like these different opportunities I was interested in. And also I also like really like the idea of like having a clean slate. I guess like just to add on like something like else that hasn't already been mentioned, I guess one of the disadvantages that I kind of like realized is, um, coming in as a sophomore at Dartmouth, like it it I was really focused on like transitioning, and in comparison, like my like peers who are also sophomores were already like doing like more like complex things. We're already like in leadership positions. We're already like doing we're already like a lot more involved than what I could like feasibly do as someone who was in my first term here at Dartmouth. And so I think I definitely felt like kind of like, oh no, like I feel like I'm behind because like I still have to transition yet again. And so that was like a tough thing. And so like in terms of like the grind, like that's something that I've like only really been able to like kind of get back into like I guess towards the end of my sophomore year. So yeah, it can be like a hard transition. And yeah, I think it should work out. Hopefully it will work out. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, super agree also. I feel like when you're a transfer student, you always feel like you're always behind in everything. When it comes to socials, everything, like people already have their own barcadas when they're sophomore, junior year. So you're like, oh, how do I insert myself into this friend group? Who are the other people I can make friends with? Because you kind of feel a little epal sometimes. So not even in the social aspect, but also in terms of like career. When it comes to Cornell, once they're a sophomore, they already start looking for junior year internships. So it's like a year and a half ahead already in terms of career. So I was like so stressed because I had to catch up in terms of school, in terms of friends, in terms of clubs. And I have to, on top of that, I have to look for an internship already for junior year. So that just made me so stressed. And I think that is another thing that makes it so difficult aside from adjusting to everything else. But what I do have to say though is I mentioned this also into some of the answers that I put there, is that you grow in so many ways that you will never have thought of. Wow, deep. Oh my God. Um, Only through the hard things that you go through when you're a transfer student can really make you grow into the person that you'd be surprised. And another benefit of being a transfer student is that you have 2 times more friends because you have friends in your old school and your friends in your new school, especially if you're um transferring from a local school at any time zone and whatever time you have, whatever time you're awake, there's always at least one friend who's awake. So that's super nice. Yes, thank you.
All right, so I think that is all for this panel. I think we answered most of the Q&A sessions anyway. If you do have any more questions to our panelists, you guys can put your emails in the, can you message the chat box?
No.
Send it to the host and panelists, and then I can send it to everyone. Yeah.
Wait, Q, I sent you on Messenger the link to the Discord, the
Yeah,
transfer Discord server.
I sent
Did you
it to
send it
the
on
chat.
chat?
Also.
Okay, nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, that's all. So thank you again to our speakers, so Sachiko, Andrea, and Risa. And we hope you learned something new, and see you guys at our next event. I know transfer students is kind of niche because it's like a bit, but it's nice for it na, like there's a lot of people who are interested in transferring, and this is a good start for your guys' transfer journey. So yeah, I'll send um the emails. Oh my gosh, the emails to everyone. So yay.
Yay.
Also, to the person who asked about like the pros and cons of having a big uni versus liberal arts, you could also reach out to me or Rhea, because I think Tufts is also a liberal arts college.
Yes,
Yeah.
Tufts is a liberal arts college, but I never really went to a big university. But I mean, if you're just interested in a small university, then yeah, hit me up.
Okay, I think we'll end the panel for now. So thank you so much, everyone, and see you.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.